Hey guys, it's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe, and I'm here with my good buddy Rich in Arizona, and we wanted to do a little chat back and forth about one of our favorite games, Earthbound, on the Super Nintendo. How's it going, Rich?
Good, man. I'm coming at you from an undisclosed location, and by that I mean my parents' house. I'm just home for the Thanksgiving holiday. And quick side note, this is the backyard in which I filmed that ECW match with our
Oh,
mutual friend Rich with the Ninja Turtle and the Ghostbuster. It was in this backyard. So
oh, okay. So, guys, you got the inside scoop. If you want to watch an ECW action figure wrestling match, you know who to talk to here.
yeah.
Um, so Rich and I, have a lot in common. We're about the same age and stuff, and we wanted to just wax poetic a little bit about Earthbound. Rich, tell me, how old were you when Earthbound came out, and how did you first find out about it?
So it came out in '95, I'm pretty sure. So I was 14 years old, and like a lot of kids growing up in the '90s, Blockbuster Video was a huge part of my life. My parents would take me there on the weekends, and that's where I got to play most of my favorite games. And what caught my eye with Earthbound was a couple of things. One, if you remember, it came in this really gigantic box, and the reason it did is because the instruction manual was the size of a magazine, and the gimmick for the instruction manual was that it was a tourist guide, and it featured each town that your characters go to. So when you're in this town, check out the drugstore and watch out for the gang, this and that. So just the size of the box caught my attention. And also, right around that time, it was reviewed in GamePro. I used to have a subscription to GamePro magazine, which doesn't exist anymore, I'm pretty sure. But that used to be a pretty cool magazine. And they had a review. They actually gave it a lukewarm review. Like they rated everything on a scale of 0 to 5, and I think they gave Earthbound 3.5s almost across the board. But it still looked like a really neat game, something that I had never played before. So I grabbed it as soon as I could, and we spent so much money renting it out. I think my parents rented it out for me for over a month, just because it took
Wow.
me so long to beat it. And with the money they spent, they could have just bought me a copy. I
Right.
wish they had.
Yeah, I actually have a very similar story, so that's another thing. Here we go with another thing in common, I guess. I was going into Blockbuster, and as you said, I saw this big box, and I was seeing all the ads they had in like GamePro and I think Nintendo Power even. And they had like weird ads, very weird ads that caught your eye with like claymation and like sort of like toilet humor. And I would go, what is this, RPG? I like RPGs in general, but I don't really have the time for them now. But back then I did as a
Yeah,
kid. So 90, would you say 95 it came out?
I want to say 95. I think it was the same year as Chrono Trigger, which is my other
Me
favorite game.
too. That's one of my
Yeah,
favorites as well. Um, so I guess everyone our age is probably going to have like that Final Fantasy VI and
yeah.
Earthbound in their favorites. Um, so I went in there and I think I rented it twice, and then my save had been on it again. So like by the time we rented it again, it was still there, and I was
Yeah,
glad.
yeah, me
But
too.
I'm just going to the chat to see if anyone. I guess I'd have to go on the YouTube channel to see if anyone's asking questions, but I can probably do that as well. Let me pop over there and make sure if anyone's watching. So I ended up going in one day and I saw that they were selling it. It was pretty cheap. I want to say it was like $15 or so, but it was cart only and it had like stickers all over it. And
Oh, so like
I
the
just
used
love,
copy that Blockbuster was renting out. Okay.
yeah, they just sold it after the fact. And I just love that it was not set in the normal RPG atmosphere where, you play games like Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger or whatever else, and most of them were medieval. If you
Yep.
were lucky, some of them were futuristic or cyberpunky in ways, but that's more like later on during like the 360, I would say, or the original Xbox even. So with Earthbound, the modern setting, being a kid and playing something in a setting like your own was very different and intriguing. Even though I found the battle system to be slightly simplistic compared to other games, both visually and gameplay wise, I still thought the setting just made the game. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, man. That was one of the things that caught my eye because, like you said, every most other RPG and action RPG games take place in a medieval fantasy type thing with swords and magic and this and that. And Earthbound was the only game I had ever seen to that point in my life that took place in a modern day realistic setting, if you
Hmm.
will. And for those of who those of you who are watching who have never played the game and aren't too familiar with it, it's sort of a Japanese interpretation of what life is like for middle America. So it's like a little corny at times, but it's really cute. And yeah, being able to play a game in which you're this American kid walking around a town and, buying hamburgers and using a baseball bat instead of a sword to hit people. Um, Hopefully art doesn't imitate life too much for you, but all those things were neat. And another thing that I like about the game is it's sort of a good time capsule for the mid '90s. Like
Oh yeah.
it's a good snapshot of what it was like in a world where ATMs existed, but AOL did not exist yet. This is that time right before, I know the internet existed technically, but this was a time in life like right before people started to have computers and have the internet. Long before smartphones. Technically, there is a cell phone in the game. It's the receiver phone. You can only get calls coming in one way. But it's like, yeah, it's just a good portrayal of that life that you and I are familiar with, because we grew up before the smartphones and everything, and the world just seemed kind of smaller, you know.
Yeah, the
And
the world the world definitely seemed smaller then and more simplistic. And as you said, because it's made by a Japanese team over at Nintendo or whomever Nintendo contracted, um, it it's funny because it's like you can relate, but it also has that weird Japanese twist because it's being your culture is being viewed at by another culture and they're just interpreting it through their eyes, sort of.
mhm.
So it makes it like that offbeat humor, from another culture seeing your culture. So it's
Yeah,
definitely funny. That's the best part.
but I don't feel like they're being sarcastic. It's kind of like a love letter to America. Like
Yeah,
like they're
I
not
don't
really
think
like
it.
trying to make fun of us too much.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was pejorative. It just seemed like I wouldn't be surprised like Hulk Hogan popped up at one point. Like
Yeah,
they tried to grab everything like American, like cheeseburgers and pizza, and even though pizza's I guess Italian initially, but you know what I mean. The things that
yeah.
were big here are big here.
Mhm.
So trying to think. I remember at one point they had scratch and sniff stickers. Was that in the game or was that in a magazine?
That was in the. I think that was in the instruction booklet,
Oh,
and
okay.
they had a monster on the cover, and the monster said, "This game stinks."
Yes, Belch, Lord
It was like
Belch
a
or Lord
reference to
Burp.
that. Yeah, Lord Belch. Yeah, one of
Right.
my favorite bosses. Yeah, so just a lot of humor. And you mentioned the potty humor. They have jokes where like people are talking to you from inside a bathroom. They're like farting and pooping jokes, which was funny for me as a kid, and I guess it's still funny now. But one of the things about this game Earthbound is that it kind of runs the gamut from at times being really funny, like real juvenile humor, to at times being really, really dark. To sort of
Mhm.
segue into one of my favorite parts in the game. It happens early on, and it's after you complete the first town of On It, and you go to the next town. And those of you who haven't played, this girl gets kidnapped, and it's up to you to find this girl because you're supposed to meet her, and she's going to be your partner. So you have to travel on your own through this area called Peaceful Rest Valley, and you're fighting these crocodiles and these UFOs and like all these bizarre monsters. And when you finally get through Peaceful Rest Valley, you get to this town in the mountains. It's called Happy Village, and the place has been taken over by a cult leader. So you go into this town, and all the houses are painted blue, and people are wearing blue clothes, and they're obsessed with blue. And so you go into this town beaten up from having gone through hell just to get there, and you're in the town, and people are attacking you more. And you have to find this kidnapped girl, and you go into this church, and you beat the crap out of the cult leader to snap him back into reality. So it's kind of an example of how the game can be funny, but it can also be kind of dark at times, especially for a child audience.
Actually, when you mentioned what you were going to say about the transition from it getting kind of lighthearted to being darker, I thought you were going to mention because the area I found to be creepy was, and I don't remember the name. I thought it was the area right after Onet, where there's like tents and zombies.
Okay, so that's after Peaceful Rest Valley in Tucson.
Oh,
Yeah, you
okay.
go to the next town, Threed, and yeah, go ahead and describe it.
That one, yeah. You get and if memory serves. I mean, I haven't played this game since I was probably 12 or 13. Um, it's like almost like a what do they call those? Like moving carnivals.
I guess it's a circus town.
It's like a circus town, yeah. And you get there and there's like zombies and like the music changes and it gets from being like all upbeat and like you're in this like suburb to this dark theme. And when I got to that town, I was like, this is kind of worrisome, like it sort of changes the feeling um, of the game. And speaking of dark, and spoiler alert, um, I've never beaten the game actually, which sucks.
Oh,
But um, the last boss the last boss is if you look online, there's like a lot of like information about it. The creator of the game, what's his name? Do you recall off the top of your head?
I should totally know that, but it's not coming to me right now.
He had went into the wrong movie theater when he was a kid, and he saw this like it's not pornographic, but almost like a semi erotic type dark film about, I think it's like an officer and a something, and it's a
Yeah,
Japanese movie, and in it something happens with, is it an abortion or a stillborn or something weird, um, but something violent as well. So it like traumatized him, he said. And at the end of the game, the last boss, if you look at the outline of like the boss's shape, it's a baby. It looks like a fetus. So I'm sure you know this.
yeah, it does look like a fetus, and he denied that in an interview, but it totally does look like that.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, if I remember it correctly, he walked into a movie as a kid. He was going to see some kids movie, but it was an adult movie instead. And I think he walked. There was a scene where a woman was getting raped or something like that, and like it
yes,
really traumatized him. And he said something like, when he was designing this end boss, it was with that in mind, like to kind of like exercise that demon. Um,
yes.
yeah, and so if you ever get a chance to finish it, that end is pretty intense. It's also one of the best boss battles in any game that I've played.
Actually, okay, here it is. His name is Shigesato Itoi, and it was the
I was going to say
military.
that.
Yeah, I knew you probably knew it. And the military policeman and the dismembered beauty. That was the name of the movie. And they said it's an adult film where a murder, a scene that becomes a murder as rape is happening. So
Lest
that's
we give your viewers the wrong idea, though, this is like a really cute game in many ways. Like it's very lighthearted, and I know this video might be getting kind of going in a certain direction, but like it's it definitely has those moments. But to me, I think what makes it my favorite game more than anything that I've already mentioned, like yeah, it's a good snapshot of the mid '90s, and it's funny. It can be intense at times, but it's a very very sweet game as well.
yeah,
And
no, I would say 99.9% of the game is lighthearted and fun in a way. There's some like elements that are creepier. Especially there's this one place where everything gets backwards. Well, I don't remember the name of that town.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
Moonside. You're in the city 4 side, and then
it
you go into
switches, yeah. So there are creepy elements, but yes, I know I'm talking about things that are not really PG here or whatnot, but the game is overall very lighthearted and fun. There are just some hidden elements and things that could be portrayed as being darker. Um,
yeah, absolutely. But definitely a story of good overcoming evil. And the one thing that I always like about this game is there are a couple of moments where where it feels very sad. Like for just to give you an example, the main character you play as Ness, he will occasionally get homesick.
right,
And when you get homesick, like I think you can't attack 50% of the time or something. And the way to cure that is to go to a telephone and call your mom, to hear your mom's voice, and then you overcome the sickness. And I, maybe my favorite part of the game is this real subtle thing. But do you remember the part where they ride the Loch Ness monster?
that's one of my favorite parts too. Yeah,
Yeah. If you remember when, so it's called Tessie, I think, right? And for copyright purposes, and so they ride this sea monster to go across the lake, and once they get on land, um, the Loch Ness monster starts to swim away, and as it's swimming away off camera, your characters slightly turn to watch the monster as it goes away. And they also do that when the Runaway Five, the blues band, when they
right.
drive off in their van after they drop you off, um, your characters turn and watch the van go away. So it kind of shows you this idea that like they're missing their friends, and just like this idea of abandonment and having to say goodbye to people. in your
Yeah, I mean,
life.
you have to think like it definitely transcends any age, but when you're a child, or at least I don't know how old they were supposed to be in the game. I never really remembered. Um,
Probably like
but
10 or something.
probably like 10 or 12, right? Maybe 13 at most. Um, though I was bigger at 13. I was too big actually. But that being said, leaving your family, going on an adventure, it sounds great when you're 10 or 12 or 13, but like you said, there are adult themes that are in the game in regards to, you're leaving your family, you're not with your mom. I forget what happened with the dad. Do you remember?
You never see the dad. He's like an absentee businessman.
Oh,
Um,
right.
he's never in the game, but he just talks to you on the phone and sends you money while he's doing
Okay.
whatever he's doing in his hotel rooms.
Just like my real dad. Um, so the other thing I was going to mention is, as I said earlier, I never beat the game, but I did years and years later download. Um, I think I downloaded like an emulator and a ROM and just played a save state of the last boss because I just wanted to see what the ending was like. And I was completely confused by them. And I don't want to ruin this, but I was confused by the mechanic of how to beat the boss. And eventually I figured it out. And I was just glad to see the ending. I had skipped probably, I think, where I ended the game myself. And the reason for that was I think I got stuck because it was very difficult. You had to grind to a degree in this game. I thought it was
Okay.
a decent amount of grinding. The part
Yeah,
where
it's
you
it's
go
and
in,
it's kind of challenging for a little kid. Like it was hard for
oh
me,
yeah,
but not having much experience. Because like I said, you have to do a lot of grinding and be smart about it.
yeah. The part I got stuck on was when you go in the dream world with Ness and he's walking around in his pajamas and you pick up those Birdmen.
Oh yeah.
And this sounds insane, I know that. And you pick up the Birdmen and you go through like the level to beat those guys. And then I think the next level is like the last level, or maybe like two levels after that is the last level. It's pretty
Pretty
close.
close.
And that's where I got stuck. So I gave my cousin my game and I said, I'm playing PlayStation now. You can have this. And then like a year later, I think I missed it. And I was like, yeah, I'll take it back. He doesn't really play it. He doesn't like RPGs. I took it back. He was like, oh, you can have this back. And my save was gone. So I was like, oh, like, completely deflated. And now the game's expensive and I don't have it anymore, obviously. Um, and I never beat it, but I did go back and play that last scene just to see what it was. And I think I watched like clips on it and stuff too, and like all the other stuff. But that's the reason I never, sadly, beat the game. So I'm glad you got to beat it. Did you beat it initially on the NES, or did you beat it on Super Nintendo, or the Wii U?
I, I beat it on the Super Nintendo after my parents spent like over $60 in total renting it from Blockbuster. It was over the summertime, and I'm pretty sure. And about a year later, I have to give a shout out to my friend Jared. He's probably going to watch this. Jared came over to my house in Las Vegas, and he got an emulator and downloaded it onto my computer, so I got to play it there. But it crapped out on me toward the end. Like when I
Oh,
had
that
about
sucks.
like 10% left in the game, it
Uh,
just crapped out. But more recently, I played through it on the Virtual Console. If you have a Wii U, you can buy it, and I want to say it's $10 or something like that. And
yeah.
if you're a gamer, it's probably like the best $10 you can spend. Honestly, like I know I'm biased, but um, it's not just a great game for the nostalgia factor. Because I mean, I can tell you that when the first Wii came out and we had the Virtual Console, it was really exciting because it gave people our age a chance to play the old NES games. And I don't want to call any games out by name and crap on them, but there were some games that I was really excited to download, and after playing them for a few minutes, the nostalgia factor wore off, and it was like, oh, this game's really not that good. It's
Oh,
not as
like
fun as
like
I remember it.
like
But
Ice
when I
Climber and like what was that one with the little guys that float into each other with the balloons and the emus
oh,
or
Bubble
whatever?
Bobble,
No,
oh, I
Bubble
love
Ball. That
Bubble
was
Bobble. That's a
no
good
Bubble
one. Yeah,
Bobble was good. Not that one.
yeah,
The
please.
Joust.
Joust. I
Joust.
don't play that one.
Oh, like there was like these old like Atari slash Nintendo games that like I think were on both systems if I recall, but like they looked better on the Nintendo and they were just like so. I played some of them like Rare Replay and stuff now, or like over the years, and they just did not, for me, hold up at all.
Yeah, River City Ransom was another one that didn't hold up for me.
Oh
Like
man,
it's
we
a
might have
game
to stop
that's
this. I love that game.
but the thing about Earthbound is it's honestly it's not just a nostalgia thing. Like everything that I've said is true about how it reminds me of my childhood and this and that, but it's a legitimately good game. So anyone
So
watching who's never played it before, like just give it a shot. It's only like $10 on the virtual console.
I would wholeheartedly agree, and I have a question now to tie into this. Did you ever play the original on the Nintendo or the sequel on the Game Boy Advance?
I didn't play um, the original Mother, and that's available on the Virtual Console now. I don't know if I'll ever get around to it, just because, like you said, I don't really have time anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and I did buy Mother 3 on the Game Boy Advance. It was never released in America, but I bought a fan translation. So all the text is in English. I forgot how much I spent on it, but I think it was under $100. And I haven't finished that yet. I was playing for a while, but then I kind of put it down and I forgot where I was. So if I did want to pick it up again, I'd have to start from the beginning, you know.
How did you
But
feel to compare to the Earthbound game?
I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Earthbound. Um, Maybe there the nostalgia factor does come in because with Earthbound I'm already familiar with it and it reminds me of things. But I did like Mother 3.
Okay.
It had like a pretty interesting storyline, but very, very different. And not a little spoiler alert, Pokey is the villain in Mother 3.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't get
I
to the point where I saw him, but I know that he eventually is going to show up.
I didn't play three. I downloaded an emulator, as I said, um, years ago as like a teen, and I downloaded Mother, and I think it was called Earthbound One or something. It was whatever it was, called. And I was like, wait a minute, is this the same game but on NES? And it sort of is. It's almost like Earthbound feels sort of like a better remake of Mother in a way. Um, it's kind of, and I'm not a fan of this movie, but Evil Dead and then Evil Dead 2 came out with a bigger budget and like the movie's sort of tighter. That's how Earthbound felt to me over Mother.
Reminds you of that.
Yeah, like it's sort of like a remake or a reimagining, but better. Even though I think they are actually sequels. The other thing was, and you mentioned Mother 3 because you said you had played the fan translation. I bought an N64, and one of the only games I wanted was Earthbound 64 because I loved Earthbound. And I waited and waited and waited, and then the N64 DD got announced, the disk drive, and they said this is what it's coming out for. And they showed like a 30-second clip or a minute clip, and I was like, oh my god, I got to play this! I can't wait. And I held on to the N64 for like ever. The DD never came out in America.
Nope.
Earthbound 64 DD never came out. I was so angry that I didn't boycott Nintendo, but I like sort of shied away from them at that point because I was so pissed off that for years I didn't get to play a new Earthbound. And then they did the Mother 3, and everyone was like, oh, this is really good, but it's only Japanese. And it was like, they did it again.
Yeah,
Like,
you
didn't
can't
they
get
come
it.
out with a 1 and 2 on Game Boy Advance? Or was that Japanese only?
Um, I never heard of that, so maybe it's Japanese only. And
Okay. So I thought they
yeah, I
came
know
out
what you
with
mean.
a.
It's kind of go off on a tangent. When I was a kid, I was totally a Nintendo fanboy. I didn't want anything to do with the Sega Genesis. I thought it was like for bad kids. But so I was like, very loyal to Nintendo. The Virtual Boy sucked, but I
Yeah.
forgave that. But then the N64 and then the GameCube. What I can say about those two systems is they had a handful of really, really awesome games, but as a whole, the library is not too impressive. Like I'm thankful, of course, for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. GameCube had Resident Evil 4 and a couple of other good games. So I'm thankful for that, but nothing compares to the library that the Super Nintendo had. You know,
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think the N64 also didn't age well. I had a GameCube a few years ago. I got it from a thrift store for like $5. And I bought like Animal Crossing, which I like a lot. I bought a couple games, a lot of games for it actually, and it looked pretty good still. I mean, I had an S video cable, I think, because the component cables are super expensive or something for the GameCube. So that aged all right, but the N64 looks horrible, like really, really bad now.
yeah. And then I eventually caved in and bought a PlayStation 1 because I wanted to play the sequel to Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, which is a whole other conversation because, yeah, no, I don't like Chrono Cross.
I
I
wasn't. We could go off the rails a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a whole other video on Chrono Cross, me not
I
liking that.
I got that one too, and I was excited, and it's so abstractly connected that I wasn't. I was like, okay, it just feels like a whole different game. I was just not a fan. Like, it's okay. It's not like some great game. It's all
It's
right.
okay. it's a phenomenal soundtrack, but the storyline is just so convoluted. And I think when I was about, by the time I was about 80% into the game, I had no idea what was going on. Like there was something with like an android, and the dragons are good, the dragons are bad, the dragons are good, and like somebody's a robot. Like what the hell, man? Like I finished the game just because I wanted to say that I finished the Chrono Trigger sequel. I wasn't gonna
Yeah.
quit, but I was so thankful it was over. It's like True Detective second season. Like I just want this to be over with. I'm gonna be loyal and see it through, but it was
Who
kind of a relief to be over.
who was your favorite character in Earthbound?
Um, Jeez,
I can go
I never
first
really
if it
thought about
helps.
that. I never really thought about that before. Do you have one?
I think so. So as a kid, we were all hopped up on ninjas and shit. So, Ninja Turtles and everything, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes were really cool, and the GI Joes. So to me, the coolest character was Pooh, and it's a stupid name, but he was like this, you know, um, I guess he was Asian, right? He wasn't Middle Eastern, he was Asian, I guess,
Yeah, like east of the Middle East somewhere.
somewhere. And he did like sort of like it wasn't karate. I don't know what the hell you would even call it. I mean, who can tell from a little 16-bit sprite this big? But he had like this, you know, ninja type aesthetic. And as a kid, I thought that was really cool. I always liked the characters that were like kicking ass in like sort of like fancy ways. Even like Sabin in Final Fantasy VI, I liked. He was my
Yeah,
favorite.
that was my favorite character in that game.
And Shadow,
Yep.
he was really cool in that game as well. Um, So I think Pooh was probably my favorite. And one of my other favorite moments, at least in Earthbound, was I remember it almost felt like you were finding secrets out. It was weird to me. Like there's two parts that stick out when you're leaving the desert and you run into those monkeys and they teach you how to warp. Like you could just spin in a
Yeah, the
circle or
teleport.
whatever and teleport to different lands that you were at. I thought that was like amazing. It like blew my mind, and I was like, "Holy crap! I found a secret." It wasn't a secret; it was part of the game, and you were supposed to find it. But to me, it felt special. The other thing was there's a part where you're on like a beach or like some hotel or something, and you eat cake.
Summers.
You eat cake, and you get into like an LSD trip, and I think that's when you go into like the dream world or whatever.
Yeah, she makes this laced cake, and like that's what
Yeah.
leads to you meeting Pooh.
Yes. So like that to me was like, wow, like it's almost like you just sort of went through different dimensions in ways, but you were doing it in such funny and interesting ways that it wasn't like the normal, oh, I'm going through a teleporter, or oh, I'm, using a spaceship. It's like now you're eating laced cake and going into some like a weird world. So it was very interesting. Their ideas were very interesting in the game. But Pooh was my favorite.
Yeah, and I think he was supposed to be from India. I think that's like the closest
Yeah, okay.
comparison. But
I knew it was
I thought he
Asia,
was
but
a
I wasn't
karate
sure
guy.
where.
He was an Indian who practiced karate.
Okay.
That's my best guess.
That sounds funny now, but yeah. As long as they're not shitting on the streets like the rest of them, I guess. That's a joke because they say there's no toilets in India, and like they just crap all over the streets, and like they're having to put out these like warnings like don't use the bathroom in the streets, like you have to tell people not to shit in the streets. It's like it's just weird, but people are getting
If
sick
I got
from
in
it.
trouble for every time I sat in the streets.
I know, right? Exactly. Um, so you don't have a favorite character?
I never thought about it that way because I always just saw it as the team. I mean, I guess it would be Ness. But he's the silent protagonist. But I kind of feel bad for the villain Pokey. I
Really?
mean, he turns into like this real bastard, but you never. He kind of just goes from being this mischievous kid to just really jumping over to the pure evil dark side. And I read an interview where the creator, when he was talking about Mother 3, he said that he felt sorry for Pokey when everything was said and done. Um, and because something bad happens to him at the end of Mother 3 that I read about. I don't want
Oh,
to spoil
okay.
it for viewers, but
I
he
was
said
I
that
was gonna
he's
say
kind of a
when you
tragic character.
yeah, I was gonna say when you beat 3, let me know because I would love to know how that ties up. So if you ever do beat it, let me know how you think and what happens.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever get to it, man, but I definitely will let you know if I do.
I mean, even if I guess you could probably pull up a walkthrough and see where you left off, and maybe so you don't have to start over. I don't know if if you invested that much time in the game, I wouldn't start over completely.
Yeah,
But
I'm probably
that's
about
just me.
halfway through. So.
That's pretty far. So, Um, Anything else about Earthbound that you wanted to chat about or that was on your mind?
A couple of things. I want to give a shout out to my good buddy Lindsay. I don't know if you can see this mug, but she bought me this as a Christmas gift. It's a custom Earthbound mug, and sorry the lighting is so bad out here, but
That's cool.
yeah. And Lindsay and I also did a marathon playthrough of it a few years ago, where we played the whole game start to finish in within a day.
Wow.
So we were pretty fried toward the end, but that was fun. Um, so hey, Lindsay, and the only thing I can think of is I alluded to this like kind of funny story about me as a kid when I played Earthbound, and it's not really funny so much as kind of sad and pathetic, but I've already committed myself to telling you. So Um, so one of the things about playing the game as a kid is it gives you the sense of adventure because you're this American boy and who just walks out of his house in the middle of the night. And there was one night, I want to say it was when I was still playing, and I was like 14 years old, and I was home alone, and I decided that I wanted to go out on an adventure. So I actually got my backpack the way Ness has a backpack. I don't remember if I brought my baseball bat with me. That seems like a key ingredient to the story, and I don't remember if I did, but I had like some kind of weapon, and I had remember Banaka used to be
Yeah.
a big thing back then, like this. I brought Banaka spray, like to defend me against rabid dogs, and I just left my house and I walked down the street in the middle of the night carrying this stuff. I think I brought food with me because the characters bring food. There was this church nearby, and I tried to walk into the church like that was the happy happy cult church, and for better or for worse, nothing happened to me. And yeah, I kind of wish I hadn't shared that story because it's pretty sad. You know,
No, I mean, I
I mean the
think as
problem.
go ahead. Go ahead, what were you gonna say?
No, just the problem then is I spent so much of my youth playing video games instead of playing football and learning how to talk to girls. And that's what happens as a result. When you're that kind of a kid,
Right,
you
no,
walk
I
out of your house in the
understand.
middle of the night with a backpack and Banaka spray, hoping to find an adventure, like a pathetic Bilbo Baggins. So, which
I
coming back to Mother 3, that's why I don't know if I'll ever play that game again because I'm 36 years old now, and we have things to do. But we'll
right,
see.
right. But no, I mean, I don't think it's pathetic at all because as a kid with your imagination and with, and even with video games, games weren't as like graphical, obviously, and they couldn't, there was no voice usually in games unless you got to like the PlayStation and the disc-based consoles. So you were filling in things in your head, how people sounded, how places were, what it would be like to be somewhere, what it smelled like somewhere, whatever. And I know what you mean. I would like kind of fantasize about being in other places where I would say, "Oh, I'm like this character. I'm gonna go on my own kind of adventure today." So I think I still carry a piece of that with me sometimes when I go out and like randomly just go places, like drive places and
Mhm.
like stop at like new stores or go to like one of my favorite things to do, and this might sort of tie into that, is when I go on vacation with Beth, I like going to places that have small towns and villages that I know nothing about, and I just walk around and check out like the stores and the people, if there's events going on, and just sort of taking it in and maybe like buying some things or whatever. And to
Yeah.
me, that's like the adult version of an adventure, like the way Earthbound is, except obviously I'm not going to run around hitting dogs and arcade owners with baseball bats. But so I get what you're saying. It's got that imagination kind of twisted in where now everything is this is what it is, and you can't really divert from that too much because you don't need your imagination as much anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. And like it definitely inspired us as kids to be a little more adventurous and to, like I said, the world was a lot smaller back then, so to speak. And you didn't have, we couldn't be doing back then what we're doing right now. So you had to walk out of your house to hang out with friends, and you have to go places for anything exciting to happen.
Yeah,
So I think in a weird way, playing those games did kind of give me a sense of adventure and a sense of courage and this impulse to kind of put myself out there at times.
yeah. I mean,
So
I was pretty much as a kid up until a certain point. I lived in the city, and it's very there's not a lot of grass or like things around. It's very like closed in concrete. Everyone's on top of each other. The buildings are all close. So to have this other world to go out into, you like that. It kind of gives you that sense of like going out in the world and doing something, whether it be like Earthbound or Final Fantasy or whatever, because otherwise you're stuck in this one room apartment or whatever I was in as a kid most of the time. So
Yeah, or in my case, suburban Las Vegas. So
I
not
forgot.
being
Yeah, I
old enough
forgot
to
you were
do.
in Vegas.
Yeah.
What did you say? What was that last sentence?
Well, living in Vegas, but not being able to do any of the fun things. So,
That
so
you
yeah,
can
like you
now.
said,
But
you need an escape.
yeah, you can now, but you might have to get checked for something afterwards. So,
Me or them?
anything else you wanted to talk about with Earthbound?
No, I think I'm good, man. I just it would be interesting to see any comments that your viewers write if they know what we're talking about. And again, if anybody wants to give it a shot, you can get it really cheap on the virtual console.
Yeah, I
And
think it's
since
aged pretty
like
well.
sincerely, it's not just a nostalgia factor; it's a legitimately fun game to play.
Yeah,
So check it out.
it's aged well. Some people say it's too simplistic now. Like I think if you were to get like these, I'm trying to think of a nice word here, millennial teenager type people, and they were growing up on PS3, I think that they would probably not appreciate it. But maybe I'm wrong. You could have some RPG purists out there that have never played it that love RPGs on the PlayStation 3 and beyond, and now will go back and enjoy it. But there are some simplicities to it, and um, compared to other games, it's not as like high tech or crazy, but it has such a cute atmosphere and a setting that usually isn't done. So I like that, as you said. I think it makes you kind of have a bond with the characters. Um, Being a kid and playing it really makes you have a bond with the characters, and everything is quirky and fun, and that's what makes it interesting. Earthbound is unto itself in that genre sort of. I can't think of any other RPGs that are like that. I'm sure there are some. I know Undertale is one people talk about now, but I've never
Yeah,
played
I
it.
haven't played that one, but
Yeah,
it's supposed to be really similar to Earthbound. But yeah,
yeah, I heard it has
Earthbound
that
has
quirkiness.
a lot of heart to it. So, and I think it definitely stands the test of time.
Yeah.
In spite of its graphical and sound limitations, I think
Oh,
it's still a great game.
the music is amazing. I mean, for a lot of Super Nintendo music, I mean, because the Super Nintendo had better sound than the Genesis overall on most games. Um, a lot of those tunes on Earthbound are stuck in my head. They were really good chip tunes or whatever you want to call them, MIDI music for a Super Nintendo game. They were unique. So, um, yeah, I guess we'll end it here. Hopefully, we have Rich back on Sega CD Universe in the future, and I had a lot of fun. So, Rich, I hope you enjoyed your first stream ever. I think.
Yeah, first one ever. Question: do you think right now this is uh, the best looking video game themed YouTube video between the two of us?
Rephrase that. One more time?
Well, I mean, do you think that we're the best looking people on YouTube right now talking about a video game that was made in the 1990s?
Best looking, like handsome?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I
Definitely.
mean, if you have another handsome friend, the three of us, we can make it officially the best looking one
Well,
ever.
we can't do that because if we add too many people to the mix, then it starts pulling away from us. You have to be friends with people that are funny looking. That's the goal. That's
Right.
why our other friend Rich is friends with me because he's good looking. I'm not, so he picks. You know what I mean? You have to work off of that dynamic.
Yeah.
So two of us is fine. Once we
I'm
get a
friends with you
third in the
both, so I
mix,
can't comment on that.
would you? I'm always breaking his chops too. It's Rich and
Yeah.
Mike. So, um, but yeah. So, Rich, thank you very much for being on the channel. I appreciate it. We'll come up with another topic hopefully in the future and do another video. And that's it. Rich, you want to say goodbye?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I'm a legit fan of your program. Been watching you for years now. So thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for being on, and I'm glad you're my friend and that you were able to make some time to come on. So thanks guys for watching. It's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe. Be good.